Hello, Susan Corbett, custom machine quilter here with this beauty to share with you today. It's a flannel quilt with wool applique and hand embroidery. It's so gorgeous. It was a lot of fun to quilt. So let's get into it. I've gotten all the black blocks quilted already, which I did not record because they're black. I didn't think they'd be able to be seen in the first place. So here is a look at how this is getting quilted. I'm starting here because when I finish outlining the embroidery, I can outline the applique. So here is some more slow, painstaking work. And I've been thinking, if there was ever a quilt that needed custom, this is it. I can't imagine. Well, I'm always surprised at the quilts that I see panographs on, that I think clearly are custom only. And I think overall quilting on something like this would be inappropriate. On this quilt, the outlining of the embroidery here is the stabilizing that I like to do around blocks and borders as job number one on any given custom quilting job. I couldn't exactly ditch quilt here, so instead I'm outlining the embroidery. So on the first pass, I started with the black thread and outlined all of that. And then as I finished each block, I put in background quilting. Then switched thread colors. If you quilt slowly and carefully enough, you're not going to sew your fingers. So that was really puffing right up, and I thought I'd hold it down so it would be more cooperative. Also, I think if I had quilted with an open toe foot, that would have been a huge risk. It would catch the embroidery. See, look how puffy that makes it all. This is flannel, and the batting is Hobbs 80/20. So there's some loft happening here. Not a great deal, but it doesn't need a whole lot. That made a funny noise, but I don't feel anything. Ah, that's what the noise was. Out of bobbin. I'm using Omni thread by Superior. I think the black was a Mettler thread, poly. This also is poly. When I get down to the last, which will be quilting in the applique, then I'll switch to a lighter thread. So that thread change will be coming up. As usual, I did not do a whole lot of planning of the quilting for this quilt. I just let it happen organically. Now that this is mainly stabilized, I can go ahead and do some little dense background quilting as long as I'm in this space. And then finish stabilizing the rest of the applique, adding more dense background quilting when I get there. And then let's see how this block is going to get quilted. I don't have any plans beyond some echo, maybe put in some flowers and some leaves. Nothing too ornate. So in this empty space, I'm adding a flower and a leaf or two, and then I'm going to fill in with more dense background quilting. So that's going to fill up the middle of the block. What that's going to do is accentuate the motifs I've quilted and make the applique puff up. I don't have to do dense background quilting all over the whole block. Just use it where I need it. I think that's going to be really effective. The cutest thing I wanted to point out is the centers of these flowers. Let's see if I can get them to show up. See, there's a little plaid underneath, which I think is so cool and funny and wonderful. So I did quilt. I mean, this thing was really sticking up like a big ball. So I quilted right around there. So for the purposes of this recording, they don't show up as much, but we know they're there. And that's pretty awesome. Hey, you can sort of see the quilting here. What I'm doing in all of them is basically leaves and tendrils and echo. You know how I love to enhance lines that already radiate, so I put some more of those in there. This was kind of fun. See, just some floppy leaves and some more little circular objects. So, you know, kind of having a blast here. Here is another puffy, empty, open space. So I'm doing a flower. Starting off with the center of a circle, and then the petals are going to be kind of square-ish. They're rounded, but they're not perfectly round. So it's a different type of flower. It's amazing the differences you can get with just a little tweak, just a little bit of a different shape. And then I'm echoing the flower. Echo is really important. Now I'll tie off and reevaluate. A consideration is, how do you know when you're done? How do you know when to add more? Well, see the space right here on this left side. It's puffing up, but not attractively. So it needs a little something to help it lie down. So another leaf there is going to be good. Put in some tendrils or something. Some little swirls. Travel around. So with minimal effort, that's looking really good. Now this block is going to be good. Let's fast forward a little bit to get over the outlining. Well, that's a challenge. Oh, I nicked it. Now, I bet a lot of people wouldn't even attempt to quilt this cluster of little blossoms, but it's going to look like a big old blob just sticking up there. That's too big of a space to leave unquilted. So it was worth it to tiptoe through the, not tulips, but even if you had to resort to some minimal hand quilting here, that would have been a really good option too. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out how quiltable this actually was. I could have done some kind of background quilting design here, but I think it's probably more expedient and a pretty good idea just to add some more leaves that look like the appliquéd leaves. They're nice and big, good looking, easy, pretty easy. And they can be different sizes, which I love, have some variety. Now, let's just fill that hole to give it a more uniform look. Can't resist. And one more. Details matter. It is worth doing these last little bits of details here and there. I know a lot of people would say, don't quilt here. Let's see what that would look like if I left those unquilted. My guess is it'll look about as great as an unmade bed, but let's find out. Now, is this tedious or is it fun? I totally think it's fun. It's not that I want to outline all day and meander. Those are tedious, but the payoff here is in watching the dimension happen. It's very satisfying to quilt around wool and flannel or anything. Just watching the magic happen, where it goes from a flat, lifeless thing into this wonderful bit of sculpted beauty. I love that. The thread sinks into the pile of that fabric, and this wonderful dimension happens, which is also enhanced by the little background quilting. It's so worth it. On this block, the background fabric is a plaid. So of course I went with that. I quilted lines along the lines of the fabric. I think that's great. And the other thing I love about this block is the embroidery on the flower. I think that's just wonderful. So all I did on that flower was ditch quilt around the dark gray. Anything more would have been squashing it, and the little flowers around it are too little for anything else. So there it is. On this block, you can't really tell from this shot. It looks really flat. How can I get... Well, there's no quilting right inside here. So it puffs up, but that 3D effect looks really good for that little cluster of flowers. That is really nice. Here, all I did was quilt around this guy. Well, and in here. No quilting on anything on this block. I mean, on the applique itself, I'm saying. Let's see. Here, I did quilt right in there on the big one, but not the little ones. They puff up nicely all by themselves, and I just didn't feel like anything more was called for in there. I did not quilt on these flowers. They're pretty small. And I didn't quilt in between the wings and right in here. And now I'm thinking that was a mistake. I think I might go back and put some in there. I think it needs it now. Okay, on this block, I did quilt inside here, and now I'm kind of wondering, was that a mistake? Because without the quilting, it was really puffing up, and I'm kind of thinking it might have needed to. I don't know. We'll have to see. There wasn't a thing I could do for all those little tiny pieces, so I didn't. I did quilt. Let's see how close we can get. You can see where I quilted along the embroidery on that flower because it was really puffing up and it wasn't an attractive puff. So, you know, if the client decides that's too much quilting, then those little stitches are pretty easy to pick out. I don't know if it shows very well on this shot, but that middle flower, the only quilting I did on the applique itself was around the black center and then some little creases, and it just did a wonderful thing for this block. Now the whole thing just puffs up wonderfully. It's extremely attractive. I thought I might go back and add some, you know, quilting right in here, but I don't think it needs it. I think it's gorgeous just the way it is. So that turned out wonderfully. All right, this block I did quilt right in here and right in there. Not the little ones because they're too little, and so now I'm debating. Does it squash the block too much? I don't know. Here, I quilted right in there on both flowers and then along up and down these lines of embroidery because they were not looking real good without it. I'm leaving that bird alone for the moment. I don't know. I might go back, but it would be the most minimal something or other, and probably around the wing structure, but nowhere else. On this block, I quilted around the centers of those flowers. Up here, this was, you know, you look for the most continuous path there is to quilt. So I started up here and quilted around there, and then quilted right down here, which led me to this, and then I quilted right around here and around there. That was fun and fast, and it's good looking. And here I ditch quilted all over that flower, but that's all it needs. Let's talk about the border. I did not record this. You'll find it on at least one other video. So what's going on here is there are 3 lines and then 2 lines. And the unquilted space in the middle makes the most wonderful texture. It's so gorgeous. And in the center of the quilt, this is the bottom of the quilt, so the lines change directions. And so the process of keeping track of which way we're going and the increment is hard enough for me. But from the very get-go, I put the, you know, this is the center of the quilt, and I had it wrong. You have to, like, I counted the number of blocks. This is one of my tricks to get out of doing any math. And there are 7. And I put the center after 3, not in the middle of the 4th one. So much consternation and ripping out. And so when you're doing, you know, here's 3, here's 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and you have to pay attention. And it's really easy to lose track of which increment we're on. So, okay, so you might ask, well, that's a blank piece of canvas. Why didn't you do some showy quilting in there? I think it didn't need it. There is so much happening in this quilt, and you want the focus to be on the appliqué. The border serves as a wonderful frame for all this great handwork. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. And I think it's just gorgeous. Here's a look at the back with the thread changes. And overall, I just had a blast quilting this. I think it's restful, serene, and gorgeous, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Next time, more wool appliqué. See you soon.